Hmm. Uh, huh?
You're listening to Cryptid Clues, featuring your hosts, Taylor Field and Ruben Olson.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Cryptid Clues, Campfire Clues. I am your host, Taylor, and today we're going to be taking a little bit of a detour here on what we're going to be talking about. Now, usually we talk about some encounters and some cryptids and some paranormal and stuff. Well, I'm going to take us into an area more associated with a few different little things, some occult and some paranormal and some technology, a little bit of everything there, specifically in relation to the Nazis. Now, before we get into that, a couple of plugs here. You can find us on our website, CryptidClues.ca. You can also find us on our social media channels, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. Additionally, on our Patreon, we can get ad-free exclusive early episodes there. And you can send us an email, cryptidclues@gmail.com, if you want to say hi, check in what's going on, and anything along those lines. Yeah, that's how you can reach us. So without further ado, let's get into this. So whether it's Captain America, the First Avenger, Raiders of the Lost Ark, or even that 2004 Hellboy movie with Ron Perlman, why are these depictions of Nazis always referencing something methodical, ancient, that borderlines magic? Well, perhaps it's not that far off from the truth. Now, it turns out there is a fair amount of evidence that can back the exploration into the unknown by the Nazis. Most of the world is used to hearing the Nazis as cruel, with a horrific regime of beliefs working to spread their disgusting narrative to other parts of the world. And while that is absolutely concrete, there's a lot of misinformation about how involved the Nazis actually were with the occult. And it's not something that people necessarily are aware of either, which is, again, why this is something I wanted to kind of shed some light on and bring up and kind of hone in on some of these mysterious components to what they were up to. There's some very odd theories out there about the Nazis, such as the idea that Hitler was possessed by a demon, or that the Nazi conquest of Europe was powered by the magical spear of destiny. Well, these are more fantastical theories, I guess would be the word. They may have not actually have any concrete foundation in reality. Now, there are many real tie-ins between occult societies and racist thinking and the Nazis during the 20th and 19th century, but how exactly were the Nazis involved with the occult? Well, from the very beginning, the Nazi Party actually incorporated occultism, and the party itself was founded in part by individuals from the Thule Society. This is an older group dedicated to studying the mythological origins of the Aryan race, as it's called. So this group was founded shortly after World War I, and it was named after a mythical northern country in Greek legend. Several prominent Nazis were either members or active within the society, including Rudolf Hess, who became the deputy further to Hitler, Alfred Rosenberg, head of the ministry that oversaw Nazi Germany's occupied territories in Eastern Europe, and Dietrich Eckart, who founded the DAP, and DAP is the German Workers' Party. So, the Fools Society's primary focus was on the study of Ariosophy, which means the wisdom of Aryans, which, again, first coined by Lanz von Liebenfeld in 1915 and in the 1920s. And this individual's belief would come to inform significant aspects of the Nazi state. Now, von Liebenfeld's argued that the Aryan people were intentionally bred via electricity by interstellar deities called dioses, while other races were the result of interbreeding between humanity and ape men. According to Liebenfeld's, gradual interbreeding had robbed the Aryans of their magical powers. So a component of this is basically ice shards and meteorites. Everything was coming down from the earth and sprinkling down. And this was a long time ago. And all these different debris had the makings for an initial human race, basically, that evolved over time and basically are present day humans. And this is a concept that was at one point accepted by Hitler and other high-ranking German officials. And it's basically a little bit more of a backing to the whole Aryan belief system that they hold so dear. In addition to embracing these occult ideas, the Thule Society also believed that a Proto-Aryan race actually lived on the island of Thule, a mythological northern island that is more familiar by its alternative name, Atlantis. Yet despite all of its connections to the origins of Nazism, the Thule Society eventually was dissolved. And this happened before Hitler actually rose to power. And most of these other occult-related groups and organizations, and there was a lot of them. Again, when the Nazis were rising up, oddly enough, they definitely had their own that they were falling back on, but there were many other groups that were rising up, and this was something that was used by the Nazis to kind of coerce and kind of spearhead their kind of narrative. And when they got into this powerful position, a lot of these organizations and activities were nudged to the side by Hitler's Rasputin equivalent-like individual. And this person's name was Karl Maria Willigut. And you guessed it. Again, this was to ensure the singular Nazi occult philosophy would reign supreme. And this philosophy focused on worshipping what's called a German god named Ermin, which dates back to around 228,000 BC. It's worth noting as well, this is at a time in this kind of philosophy that the Earth had multiple suns and was populated by giants and a variety of other cryptids and mythological creatures. And I found that very interesting when I found that. But getting into the realm of ancient times and beings that walk the Earth, what about inside the Earth? Some of Hitler's top advisors actually believed in this theory and that the Earth was indeed hollow. There was even an expedition by the Nazi military that took place in an effort to exploit any such realism attached to this theory. So here we have the foundation of an exploration that is leading into possibly being connected with this. Again, I spent some time looking into one topic and then thinking, okay, let's see what we can find with this. Typing in this topic and then looking at possible things that aren't blatantly connected to it, but are affiliated with it in the area. And moving forward with this, we can find, and I emphasize the word of find, a multitude of authors reporting on secret bases that the Nazis made in the Antarctica back in the 1930s. The main story goes that an expedition did indeed take place, but no claim was made by Germany. But that isn't how most see it. This concept of them basically having an expedition to go off and, again, look for hollow Earth. In this case, going off and finding an area to lay claim to in the Antarctica. This concept fueled the idea of submarine convoys and underwater bases, possibly even hollow Earth facilities operated by the Nazis. So these are things that are kind of formulating one of many tentacles reaching out into a different avenue, if that makes sense. So we have this occult belief system and philosophy that the Nazis were incorporating. And then we have these things that are now fueling their agenda to go off and find even more mysterious locations and areas around the world. And is this to further their spread? Like, what is their goal and their objective is what I'm trying to figure out here. And so far, all this has been on the spiritual side of things. That's segued into the exploration portion, but what about the technological aspect? Now, conspiracies exist that the Nazis had anti-gravity UFO tech and that it was retrieved by the United States following the war. Leading off from our Antarctica discussion, it's rumored again that these flying saucer ships were actually kept in post-war secret German bases below Antarctica. Now, these ships are also attributed to being the Foo Fighters, not the band, but the unknown flying objects that many World War II pilots often spotted while out flying. Now, I'm going to jump to a quick ad break here, and then we'll be right back. And we're back. I know Ruben's much more smoother with dropping those. A lot more smoother than I am. But again, we can see the movies and rumors of all these things Hitler and the Nazis were focused on acquiring and creating. But the fact remains that throughout all the representation and misinformation lies a subtle but scary truth. For whatever the reason ultimately is, Hitler did indeed sought after things like the Holy Grail, Thor's hammer, and other things pulled right out of the unknown. I know I mentioned prior that the debris that came crashing down and resulted in the formation of the Aryans, it was an expedition, I believe, that was sent out into Tibet to look into debris and components that would have, I guess, proven this belief, this philosophy, this idea, and this concept that they came from outer space. Now, the side part of that is I looked and I couldn't find any concrete results of this expedition. There were some expeditions taken by members of the Third Reich, but nothing that was really deep diving into it. Again, these are such obscure things that to really find information on this is very difficult, but you got to connect the dots, and some of these things we will never know, and I'd love to know the basis or foundation to such bold adventures to find these new lands and artifacts, if there is indeed some truth to them. But one can't forget that if they are hidden from humanity, it must be for a good reason. The lack thereof humanity seen by man, and especially the Nazi Party, is reason enough to warrant that we aren't ready to acquire such powerful tools. Not until we can learn to embrace and accept people from all walks of life to be who they choose to be, who they feel to be, who they want to be. And I think that's an important reminder here. Now, going off to find off the Holy Grail, Thor's hammer, those are some crazy things. Thor's hammer is attributed to being one of these powerful weapons that was left behind by, again, the original Aryans. And the Holy Grail, the relation that has, it's just, the list goes on and on and on of just rumors and things that are trying to be acquired for. And again, you see the movies like Raiders of the Lost Ark or The Last Crusade as an actual brilliant example, and it's Hollywoodized, so people see these things and they just kind of take it for what it is and they leave it at that. But it's an important reminder that there was something going on. A big component for me to take a look into these things stems from this exaggerated history that Nazis play in movies and video games. The mysterious component always attached to them in regards to artifacts and locations. It made me want to see what was really going on. And while a lot of that information, as I said, is still kept under wraps, you can find dots that oddly enough sync up and shed not all but a small amount of light on what the Nazis were up to. And I personally hope to God that the occult, the necromancy, the demonic practices they engage in stopped after the war there. Now, there is a component of that attached to modern day society, but that's certainly a topic for another day, as I know Ruben has a lot to speak to on that front. But getting back to what the Nazis were up to with these different things, magic was also a very prominent thing that Hitler actually was looking into. There was an underlining passage that this is attributed to the demonic possession of Hitler as well. And I quote, "He who does not carry demonic seeds within him will never give birth to a new world," end quote. Now, this was apparently underlined by Hitler, and this is something that was, as I said, attributed to that demonic possession. Such a channeling of demonic power, or this type of mana or magic, has always been like a core component to this occult aspect of the Nazi Party. And again, not just magic, but ruins are another thing that is attributed to this. Certain pieces of jewelry and weaponry have been found ever since World War II that actually have ruins carved onto them. And it's unfortunate that such things have been now used and acquainted with these objects. Now, if you look at the history here, there's actually a lot of reference and meaning to it. And again, the Nazi ideology was the belief that they were superior to all other races. And what they used with ruins were certain letters that had specific meanings to them. And in this ideology, ruins took on a whole entire new meaning, well beyond the simple characters for writing. And every single ruin, again, had its own meaning. And the Nazis believed that this meaning had this very powerful reason for their people. So one of the best known Nazi ruins is probably the S ruin, originally known as the Sun ruin. And back in 1929, it was renamed as the Sieg ruin. This was a ruin of victory, and it became actually the symbol of Hitler's SS. And you have the O ruin, and this was meaning an inheritance and was used as a symbol of like blood and soil. And then the T ruin, which was a symbol of war and struggle after the god of war. And that one, from what I found, became popular in youth organizations for the Nazis. And then we also have the R ruin, which became the symbol of either life or death. And that one varies depending on which way the lines are facing, whether up or down. So you have all these different components that were, again, used in a form of indoctrination to sow your belief into the youth organizations and the people involved, like joining up into the SS, all these different things. And it's so unfortunate that prominent historical artifacts too had to be engraved with these ruins that had such heavy and disturbed meaning and references behind them. And it doesn't stop there. This whole deep dive into magic and ruins, it just continues on into witches. And this is an aspect that I didn't realize that Germany and the Third Reich had an interest in. So looking into it, we can see that there was actually a secret bureau that was created to gather evidence of historic witch hunts. This was started in the 1930s. Now, there was a team of a few SS officers that worked secretly in this unit called the Special Assignment Unit. Now, the special group, which consisted mainly of young men around their 20s, they were going through so many reports that were sent in from around the country, and they were looking at all the different things about these witches and these witch hunts, and basically who had been accused of magic and witchcraft centuries earlier. In other words, the unit's objective involved assembling a database of these trials and these executions. And over the course of the mid to late 1930s, they basically combined archives and libraries in Germany and other countries to create what I'd found over 33,000 index cards, together with supporting documentation, as well as a huge library on witchcraft. Now, as a number of historians had observed, there is this fascination with all the forms of this magic and the occult. And this is where we really have this introduction into the culture and rituals of the inner circle of the SS. So it's at every different level of this regime where you have the different aspects that of magic and of occult, technological speaking, like the UFOs and the paranormal, the necromancy. There's so much going on, and so many people can look at this as, hey, it's just a waste of time. But is it primarily used as a tool for justifying the atrocious crimes that they committed against humanity, or was there something prominent involved here as to why they did it? That to come up with so much information on witches just seems quite baffling. Like, that can't solely be used as a way to indoctrinate your soldiers, your people, your society, can it? I mean, maybe it is. Maybe it's just complete bullshit. I can't for sure speak to that. I can just speak to looking into the information I found. They did organize these expeditions to find these artifacts. They did organize these special bureaus to research this information and compile libraries and archives together. And I'll definitely stand on the fence of being, why? why did they do these things ultimately? And it's just something I don't think I'll ever get to know. And yeah, I'm curious though. What are your thoughts on this? What information have you explored when it comes to the Nazis and the very scary, paranormal, technologically advanced UFO cryptic components that are involved with this? Because there's such a, I don't want to say rich because it makes me sound like I'm giving it a light when it's just a very dark component, but it has a very vast, is the word, a vast amount of just different explorations and dabblings and components that is just at the end to its core very, very fascinating. And I hope you enjoyed me kind of condensing and piling all this information together for you. I know it was definitely very interesting for me to look into this. Like, my family has a lot of history with World War II, and it's always been a very sentimental thing when I dive and explore these topics. But to actually take a crack at the scary, darker components of this, where they're looking into the unknown, it was just such a fascinating thing to really, really explore. So I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode, and until next time, you can find us. CryptidClues.ca is our main website. Social media channels, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. And additionally, you can find us on Patreon with ad-free exclusive early episodes. And if you want to send an email, say hi, cryptidclues@gmail.com. So until next time, stay safe and take care.